so welcome to this webinar, this Archiware P5 webinar. This is called Effortless Video Storage with Archive and Backup, OWC Jellyfish Manager 3.0 and Archiware P5 Integration Made Simple, which is a bit of a mouthful, but we'll make sense of it together. So this is David speaking from Archiware, and with me, I'm delighted to introduce Luke to you. Hi, Luke.
Hey, David. Thank you, and thank you everyone for joining.
Luke is the CTO at OWC Enterprise Storage, so that's Otherworld Computing, and the Enterprise Storage Unit is where the Jellyfish products fit in. So let's get going. We're going to record the sessions. We did one earlier for the European people, so we'll see which is the best one and put it on YouTube. Send you all a link. We're really keen to get your questions, so please ask questions in the question box within the GoToWebinar UI, and Luke and I will sift through those in the last 10 minutes of the webinar and give you some really good answers. So ask us anything relating to what we're talking about at all. So in this webinar, I'm going to start by telling you all about Archiware P5 in case you're not familiar with our Archiware software product. So a complete overview of that, particularly in relation to archiving and replication. Then Luke's going to tell us about OWC Jellyfish rather. So what those products are, what they do, all about them, the new software release that they've got where P5 is actually included and embedded within their OS. Then I'm going to give you a little whirlwind tour of what it looks like to be archiving and restoring from Jellyfish in Archiware P5, which is what this is all about. And then we'll go to those questions that I'm hoping you're going to be asking us. So without further ado, Archiware P5. Actually, what we were going to do is turn our cameras off so that, Luke's already done his, so that you can concentrate on the slides, and we'll put them back on at the end if we remember for the interactive Q&A session. And let's get a pointer up. So Archiware P5 is a software suite. It includes these three modules all around data management. So we have a backup, we have an archive module, and we have synchronize. So P5 Backup is a backup product. So everybody on this webinar knows what a backup product is. It's about disaster recovery and copying your important data. Whereas archive is more of a media entertainment focused thing, where rather than the copying, you're generally moving data from primary storage to create free space. So think of completed project folders that are using a lot of space, but you don't need them on your storage. So P5 Archive is there to handle that workflow for you, and it intends to keep that data for the long term by using tape and cloud storage, which is the storage which kind of lasts forever versus disks which don't tend to. And then we have a mini media asset management interface to make it easy to go find stuff that you archived years later and recover it back to disk if you need it to repurpose or for whatever reason. Kind of works at the same time with OWC Jellyfish OS also has a media browser for the online stuff. And then over on the right-hand side, we've got the product that we call P5 Synchronize, which is about cloning data from disk to disk. So we're talking about a file and folder replication between hosts so that you can have up-to-date copy that you could fail over and use if you had a problem. And so this is particularly useful within the Jellyfish environment, because if you've got two Jellyfishes, then you can replicate between them in both directions if you wish. Or if you've got a load of smaller Jellyfish units for the big Jellyfish in central office, then you can have a hub spoke thing and you can replicate everything to head office. Okay, so backup versus archive. This is Archiware's educational kind of mission, is to make sure everybody knows that they need a backup, at least two backups really, because if a backup fails, you still need an insurance policy backup. But over on the right-hand side, we're talking about archiving, and customers need to understand that they all need both really. You need to be able to use your cold storage for both backups for DR purposes, where you're copying everything and you're backing everything up every day, versus archiving where you're deliberately archiving folders or archiving data based on last modification date. because that data doesn't need to stay on your expensive storage. You can move it to cold storage like LTO tape, which we're going to talk about in a moment. LTO tapes are designed to take data and it just sits there without using any power for decades in case you're going to need it. And this software allows you to manage a workflow around that. So with archiving, you're running it as needed, as and when you know that a project is complete. Media broadcast companies, science, anybody with big data, big media files, they all need an archive because otherwise they get clogged up with big files filling up their storage. Now, P5 is it's configured and managed through a web interface, which we're going to look at. But here's a quick screen grab of what it looks like to be browsing a bunch of media files that you archived some time ago. Even though they've been deleted from disk storage, we can see them in this web interface. We can see thumbnails. We can play back a little proxy. We can see metadata, so that we can find what we're interested in our archive and then choose things that we want to restore back to our disk storage so that we could repurpose a project or something like that. So this is the kind of hub of the archive interface, where stuff that you've already archived maybe years ago is easily viewed and accessed, and you can see what you've got and what you might want to recover back to your storage. So archive and backup typically uses LTO tape or cloud storage. So tape is the kind of upfront cost. You're going to purchase equipment, you need somewhere to put it, but it tends to give you a lower cost per terabyte. It scales from standalone single drives that you manually insert tapes into, and OWC have such a Thunderbolt 3 or SAS device within their lineup that we're going to see. And it scales up to tape libraries, which go in a rack, need cooling, might have 25, 80, 200 tapes inside, and a robotical mechanism that allows the tapes to be inserted into the tape drive. There are a number of different LTO generations that we're going to look at. Archiware supports all of this hardware, all the different LTO generations. It supports writing across multiple drives in parallel, lots of flexibility in the way that we support LTO tape. We also support cloud. So you've got your Amazon and your Microsoft Azure, Blackblaze, Wasabi, about 10 more S3 compatible cloud storage vendors. We can write data to the cloud instead of the tape. So if you don't want that upfront capex hosting hardware, you just want somebody else to look after that, then you can pay these guys and they'll do that for you. The LTO roadmap is shown here. So we're currently on Gen 9, where we get 18 terabytes per tape of uncompressed data. So even if your media files already compressed, you can get 18 terabytes of those on one small tape cartridge. And then LTO generation 10 will be along quite soon, I understand, and that will dramatically increase the storage per tape, although none of this is confirmed until the LTO consortium released a new product. But LTO 9, 18 terabytes per tape and about 350 megabytes a second of write speed. So tape devices are great for archiving and they're not particularly slow. So in this graphic, we've got archiving from LTO, archiving to LTO from one or more hosts, where we're looking at these Jellyfish units, Jellyfish Studio units. So what we have on the left-hand side is we have our P5 server, where we've got our tape hardware attached, and we've got P5 configured so it can write to that tape hardware. And of course, it would be able to write from the disks that are local in this Jellyfish unit here, but you can add additional Jellyfish units and then across the network also archive those to the same tape device. So P5 operates in a workgroup setting where you can have multiple hosts, in this case these Jellyfish storage units, transferring data between each other. So in the archive module, you can have what we call agents over on the right-hand side, providing data through the P5 server on the left-hand side to that tape device. So that's P5 archive. You can archive from multiple Jellyfish units to a single drive, effectively sharing that drive across the network. Then you might want to do file and folder replication. So here we're using P5 synchronize, and we've got two smaller Jellyfish units, and they can replicate to the big guy in the middle. So, these units are going out on a set, coming back, and then you could use P5 synchronize to do an automatic replication of that data back to a central point, and then you could even maybe wipe those and go task them with some new job on a different set. And then finally, maybe you want to do both things. So maybe you want to do that replication from the small guys to the big guy in the middle, and then from there archive and probably back that up to LTO as well. So you can combine P5 synchronize and P5 archive to make a more interesting workflow where you're pushing files and folders across a network, making a second copy on a file system, and then archiving from there to tape. And then maybe deleting that stuff after you've archived it. So a bunch of different workflows there. Hopefully I've got across the fact that P5 is a software product. We can install on Mac, Windows, Linux, QNAP, Synology, all of the regular NAS and operating systems. And now also we're not bundled, but our software is included in the Jellyfish operating system, which Luke is going to tell us about in a moment. And this means that any Jellyfish, you can just turn P5 on, add a license key, and then start to enjoy all of these workflows and maybe add some LTO hardware into the mix as well. So with that, Luke, would you like to talk to us about the Jellyfish?
Awesome. Thank you, David. Yeah, so for anybody who doesn't know about Jellyfish, let me take you through a brief overview of what makes us unique and stand out. So we're very big on the Jellyfish ecosystem. We are a network attached storage appliance, and we have two unique software products that helps manage our system and make it super easy for people to use. The first one is Jellyfish Manager. So Jellyfish Manager is our OS and management platform that we write and build ourselves. We make really complicated things super easy to do, whether that's building a shared media pool or you want to adjust your network settings, add users and permissions. You can do it all through the web browser from any machine that's connected to the Jellyfish or on the same network as the Jellyfish. Jellyfish Connect. This is our native desktop application for Mac and Windows. And this allows you to connect to any Jellyfish that's either local on your network, remote, or directly connected. There's no settings need. It will automatically discover your Jellyfish or group of Jellyfish on your network. You can see in the picture on the left that there's a bunch of Jellyfish that gets discovered, and you can configure them all at the same time. Jellyfish Connect also helps you control access to shares. So when people connect to the desired Jellyfish, when they log in, they have to log in and set it up. They will only see shares that they have access to. So it's a nice way to help people authenticate, mount the share, and we also help set up your desktop computer. So do things that nobody really worries about, like set your network connection up for jumbo frames, give yourself a static IP address if you're directly connected, those kind of things. So just some easy software management.
I wanted to ask Luke, do you limit the number of network connections? Does that license with Jellyfish or?
No, not at
Yeah.
all. There's no licenses. You can connect to as many Jellyfish as you have on your network.
Cool. Okay. And do you license the number of incoming client connections per Jellyfish?
No, we do not. There's no license fees over and above what you see inside of a Jellyfish. Only when we have third-party integrations, we allow all the integrations to be installed and configured. But of course, you would need to license the third-party software. But all the Jellyfish in-house software is part of the ecosystem that's bundled with the purchase of any Jellyfish. There's no limitations on a Nomad versus an XT. It's one software platform for all of them.
Got it. Understood. Okay, I'll take you to the next slide.
Great. So as part of that ecosystem, we have specialized media software. So Jellyfish Media Manager is what we are rebranding our Jellyfish Media Engine to be in the new Jellyfish Manager 3.0. It will be a really powerful transcoding engine, which we can already do. But what makes it unique is that you'll be able to manage these files from within the web browser by logging into Jellyfish Manager. So you'll be able to move, copy, rename, tag, transcode, create proxies, all of those kind of things from within Jellyfish Manager itself. Jellyfish Remote Access. this is powered by ZeroTier, which is a third-party application, but it allows you to remotely access your Jellyfish from anywhere in the world as long as you have Jellyfish Connect installed and linked to the same network ID that the Jellyfish is connected to. So very simple process. You just connect in the integrations. You can set up an account on ZeroTier, and then that will allow you to essentially create a VPN using their platform to configure Jellyfish remotely around the world.
Yeah. And we were talking about how you can just install a ZeroTier on your Mac from, sitting at home, and then have access to the Jellyfish storage immediately without having to do any
Exactly.
network configuration, exposing the Jellyfish or on a public IP and all of that kind of stuff. It just works.
Yeah, exactly. And ZeroTier also has an application for your phone or iPad, so you would be able to reach your Jellyfish remotely from those devices if you wish to. Of
Hmm.
course, they wouldn't support Samba or anything like that, but yes, the ZeroTier app, which we facilitate the installation with Jellyfish Connect, it will install ZeroTier for you and manage the IDs, or you can install their
Hmm.
native desktop application.
Okay, cool. And the transcoding takes place on the CPU within the Jellyfish, but you spec fairly meaty hardware in these units, don't you? So that that's all possible.
Yeah, all Jellyfish have got the best hardware we can fit into the box that it comes in. We're all
Hmm.
about performance, which we'll chat about on the next slide, but we basically put in the best hardware with the best software that we can to make sure we get the most out of every bit that's in there. So when you transcode, you are really using the full performance of the hardware in the box.
Yeah, got it. Okay.
So yeah, we're talking about performance, and Jellyfish is specifically built for media-centric workflows. Everybody within the Jellyfish team largely comes from the film and media industry or animation, live action, post production, whatever it may be. We all come from that kind of a background. So we really do build and optimize our workflows for media centric companies. We always build for performance first and redundancy. Those are our two main keystones of how we build our hardware and our software. I really want to make sure that above everything else and above features, that performance is the number one. And of course, we never really want to lose data for clients, and so redundancy is built into our disk arrays and how we set up our systems. Again, we always try and make sure that things are as easy to set up as possible with our management software, and we always try and provide as best advanced customer assistance and support as we can. So we really do try and make everything as cost effective and scalable as possible. And by scalable, I mean that you can buy any one of our rack mounted products as a single unit and add expansion bays as you go. So we really do try and make things as scalable as possible. And we can go to the next slide, David.
Okay.
Right, so here's a bit of a workflow diagram that includes some OWC products as well as Jellyfish and Archiware. And so you'll see an XT and an R24, which are kind of our big flagship products on the right-hand side, and a Jellyfish Nomad, which is our smallest product that we make, designed for going on set and being carried around with you. Um, Archiware P5 is kind of like the keystone that will help you do those backup, archive, or synchronized processes between all of these devices. I've included in the bottom here an OWC Thunderbird 8, which is direct attached um, array via Thunderbolt. So you put 8 drives in it and connect it directly to your Mac. Comes with our software application, and you can build an array with that. The OWC Archive Pro LTO is a single slot tape library that allows you to connect via Thunderbolt to a computer or SAS to a SAS connected device. It does also have storage internally. You can add storage so that it acts as a buffer while it's writing to tape. And Archiware, of course, is the center of helping push those different workflows. So as David was talking about before, we can synchronize between the Nomad and the R24. We can install the desktop application and write that data to a Thunderbay, or even the OWC Pro LTO, Archive Pro LTO.
Got it. Okay.
So this is the new redesigned Jellyfish Manager dashboard. So for anybody who's used Jellyfish Manager before, you'll notice that this is slightly different. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is our UI going forward from later on in this year. We're not going to talk too much about Manager 3.0 as it is, but this gives you a good idea of our ease of use how quickly we want people to be able to get to features in the system. So here you just have a very clean dashboard, and we're going to focus on integrations today, which is the second from the right. And that's where we'll find the P5 integration. So if we go to the next slide, David, we can have a look here. So this is our 5-step, 5 clicks to getting to actually logging into Archiware P5. So as David mentioned, Archiware P5 is pre-combined into the Jellyfish operating system. So every single Jellyfish will ship with Archiware P5 pre-installed, but disabled and turned off. And all you need to do to make it work is to go to integrations from the dashboard, hit the Archiware P5 integration on the left-hand side, and you'll see there's a little P5 is not enabled button. You click that button, and it will tell you that P5 is currently undergoing configuration and setup, which we automate for everybody. And then it will just present you with a blue button to open P5. And that'll link you off into Archiware P5's standard web UI dashboard that everybody knows for anybody who's used P5 before. And you'll be able to log in there and then add your software licenses to activate P5 for whatever you want to use it for, whether it's sync, backup, archive, whatever it may be.
Okay.
So again, yeah, we try to make that really, really simple and really easy.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you putting us in there and making it so easy for people to locate us. So what we're going to do now is give you a little demo. So here's the screen that you saw. This is the one that you get to after you click the link that's included within the OWC Manager. Then it takes you to our login screen. But you can do this from any browser on any host that's got access to the Jellyfish where the P5 software is running. So I'm going to log in here with my credentials. So you can set up multiple accounts in P5 and choose what people are able to do. So you could have an administrator user, which is what I'm logging in as, that can do everything. So I can show you stuff, but you might just have somebody that's able to do restores from data that's been archived, but not do anything else. So you can carve up roles for people so they can just see the bits of the product that they need to see. So across the top here, we've got backup, synchronize, archive. On the left-hand side, there's something called a license manager. It's worth noting that the P5 software needs to have a license in order to operate. So if somebody is interested in trying it out, they can go onto Archiware's website at archiware.com and get an evaluation license like this one, which will run until a specified date and has a license key. And you can use these evaluation licenses wherever you want until they expire. So this would be the way to try P5 out in your own Jellyfish environment to see how it works out for you. So we've got some license keys there. So the first thing I'm going to quickly run through with you is what it looks like to do archiving. So there are two ways of archiving your data from Jellyfish broadly. The first one is manually archiving. So I can click here and I can see that we've got 3 Jellyfish units on our P5 environment. And I can then browse and see the contents of a file system on that Jellyfish, of a share, and I can then choose things that I want to archive. So this is a live view of what's on this Jellyfish. If somebody were to add files and folders, they would show up immediately in this interface. And I can come in here and I can start to build a list of files and folders that I want to archive. So I could say I want to archive these JPEGs and I want to archive this folder and I want to archive this folder and so on until I have everything together that I want to archive. And then when I'm ready to go and archive this stuff, let's say to tape, then I'm going to hit the archive button and I'm going to choose which archive workflow I want to use. There's a tape and a cloud one configured here. I could add some metadata that makes it easy to find via a job number or a customer name or something like that. We are also able to pre-fill these fields by ingesting metadata from within the files themselves to give more information to search on. And then I would hit the start button to actually trigger that archive job, and we would go write that data to tape. I won't do that right now. And then we have something called a job monitor window here, which allows you to see running jobs, as you can see in the middle, and then you can see when they've finished, how much data they saved, whether there are any problems, where everything works smoothly, and so on. The other way that you might want to archive with P5 is something called an auto archive. And that takes place within our archive setup here, where we can choose which jellyfish we want to archive from, choose the folders that we want to archive, and then simply build a schedule to say, on weekdays, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, at this time of day, maybe in the evening, 2300 hours, run this job, archive the folders that you've selected, and nobody needs to interact with P5. That's going to happen every day. And then you can work with hot folders. So you can say we have folders on our storage, and the stuff that we put in these hot archive folders will be archived at 11 p.m. every day. So you can just move stuff into a position on the file system, and then it's going to be archived. So you can either do that, or you can do the ad hoc manual archiving that I just showed you here. And then down the line, after months or years of archiving, obviously you're going to want to find something that you archived a long time ago. So you do that in the Restore tab here under Archive, because we want to restore from the archive in the Jellyfish archive. And you can see here those 3 folders that you saw on the storage. Now, these 3 folders are now represented in our archive index. So these folders don't exist on the Jellyfish storage anymore. They were deleted because they're completed projects. And if I look in one of these folders, this folder here, for example, there are a lot of JPEGs in here. And we can see the names of the files, we can see the modification date, the archive date, how big they are. And on the right-hand side, we have previews. So when we're archiving, you can generate previews of files, either little proxies of media files or static thumbnails. And then you can see what you have in this folder. So we have lots of JPEGs. So it might be that I identify that I want to restore some of these files. So I can then build a restore selection in much the same way that we selected what we wanted to archive. We're now browsing the archive index, and we're adding things that we want to recover. For media files, I have some CCTV files here. Same deal. We generate thumbnails. We can also have our information panel, which will show us a proxy. So you can see these are moving proxies that we generated, transcoded from the original files. Some of these have got some more movement in than others. So you can then play back and media files to determine if this is the file that you were looking for from your archive. And if it is the file that you want, then you can also add these to your restore selection. So you can see my restore selection has grown there. And of course, as well as just browsing through folder names that you recognize and seeing files, you can also, of course, search. So if I search for hospital, for example, there's a couple of files and file names with hospital in the file name. And you can search on the name, the date they were archived, descriptions that you typed in, like the description that we typed in earlier, or specific metadata fields that you've set up P5 to ingest into our index. And then when you're ready to restore these files, you hit restore to. You can configure which jellyfish on your LAN you want to restore to, which folder you want to go to, whether you want to relocate somewhere different. And at that point, P5 will figure out how many files you're restoring, how big they are, and it will tell you down here which tapes or which cloud service is needed to restore the files. So in this case, it's cloud, but it would list the IDs of tapes that you would need to get together to put in your drive, or it would tell you whether or not they're already in your tape library. So it holds your hand the whole way, makes it really easy to get your data to LTO or cloud storage and back again using this mini MAM interface that we have. So another quick thing I want to show you is synchronize here. So we were talking, if I just jog your memory regarding I put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but it's still ringing. So, so if I go back to the slide where we were talking about a synchronized workflow like this one, then here we're synchronizing from a couple of different smaller jellyfish to the big one in the middle. So this is the workflow that we can configure under the synchronized tab. And in here, you're basically specifying a source. So that could be one of these jellyfish, and a destination, and then the folders that you want to replicate. And down at the bottom, a schedule, much like with the archive, to say that you want to run this synchronized job every day at 11 p.m. or every 4 hours throughout the day. And every time we run, we'll compare the source and destination folders, figure out what's different, and then copy those changes across. And as part of that process, we can keep previous versions of files, because you might not want to lose a version of a file just because a new one is arriving. And we can also use ZFS snapshots to achieve point-in-time instant snapshots of storage. So synchronize, on the surface, it's very simple because it's copying files and folders between hosts, but it provides a lot of quite powerful workflow elements in there as well. And with all of these data moving features, you can always add a filter to select which data from all the data that we're seeing that we want to archive. So you could select based on file names or metadata, or when the file was last modified, for example. So, okay, that's my demo done.
So David, something I just want to mention that's important to note is that when running P5 on a Jellyfish, we use a non-standard port. And so when you're adding those additional clients to your lists, you would want to specify port 8010, which I think Archiware is standard port 8000. So something for people to just note there. We do run on a non-standard port, which we will make available, but port 8010.
Yeah, that's a good thing to call out. So you can see whether these two jellyfish that I've added as my clients, you can see under port, they're configured on port 8010. When you're adding a port, by default, we put port 8000 in here as the default. So if you're connecting to a jellyfish, you just need to change that to 8010 so that we're connecting to the right port, because OWC are running P5 and it's listening on port 8010. So that's just a little technicality to be aware of that might save you a bit of time. So yeah, we wanted to see what we have in the way of questions right now. So let's go take a look, and I'll just run through the questions that you guys have typed in. But it's not too late to add more questions if you're thinking of something, or what are the questions that I'm going to read out makes you think of something. So a question from Donnie: looking forward to getting more product updates related to Jellyfish Manager. Okay. So Don is enthusiastic about Jellyfish Manager and what's coming. Donnie also asks, I probably should have read this one first, where can we learn more about your P5 licensing models? Can you drop a link in the chat? Luke's already done that. So yeah, there's a configurator on Archiware's website, Donnie, and in there you're broadly looking at telling the configurator what storage you want to use for your archive. So if you single tape drive, maybe a tape library with 2 drives and 25 slots, that's going to influence the license that you need. And then you need to know whether you want to do archive, backup, synchronize, or which combination of those workflows you want to have enabled. And if you're using cloud storage, the product is dependent upon how many terabytes of cloud storage you want to be able to access. In units of 8 terabytes. So yeah, the configurator will collect those pieces of information from you, and then it will tell you which products you need to buy to get that functionality and how much it's going to cost in your currency. So P5 licensing is done like that. There's a bunch of bundles which give you a kind of a single price for a very typical amount of functionality. Like, for example, our biggest selling bundle provides archive to a 25 slot LTO library with 2 drives in it. So that's a pretty typical tape library size in media and entertainment, plus the archive workflow. So I just closed that by accident. So let me just open that up again. So if I'm starting, I think the latest questions, just trying to work out the order. Yeah, we'll go in this order. So question from Anthony. So the advantage of Jellyfish Media Manager is so people outside of the network or remote can access and move files. Luke, do you want to answer that one?
Yeah. So yeah, Anthony, that is one of the advantages. It does allow you full control over to manage your media from the web interface, which Jellyfish has not traditionally been able to do. So anybody who's connected via Jellyfish remote access or any other remote access will be able to rename, move, delete, copy, whatever you need to do to manipulate those files and initiate transcoding sequences.
And can you download a file through that web interface as well?
You can, yes. You can either download previews of those files, which are just smaller proxies, or you can download the original file itself.
Okay. So if you're remote and you don't actually want to mount the file system, but you just need to access a file, you could do it that way. Yeah.
You could, definitely.
Okay. Next question is from Nick. Nick asks, what about using both synchronize and archive together for version management and then having deduplication for what is written to tape? So yeah, you could combine the two. So when you're using synchronize, you can track previous versions of files. Those are stored in a separate folder by synchronize on the target. And then you could archive those to tape. So you've still got that historical set of versions for changing files, and then delete them from the storage. So yeah, that would be one way to do that. It's an interesting thought, Nick. I like that. So my email is up the front on the first slide here, df@archiware.com. So if you want to ask a bit more detail about that, you're welcome to email me and we can go into detail on it. And as follow up from Nick, if something is deduplicated, does it show up in multiple locations in the index still? Well, the way the index works is via snapshots. So I'll just show you real quick. If you're browsing our archive index and you're looking in this folder, then there's a menu top right that gives you a timestamp every time that folder was saved, and you can flick through these. This probably doesn't work in my demo system, but if you move through different snapshots, you'll see what was in the folder at that point in time. So if you've got a folder that changes every day that you're archiving, which you could do, then you'd be able to choose a date in here, and there's a picker that will let you go back in time and find dates that are much further back, and then you could see the contents of that folder at that point in time. So I'm not sure if that answers your question. If something is deduplicated, does it show up in multiple? Yeah. So I think that hopefully that helps. If not, you could always ask another one. So let's just remove that question. So Alexander asks a Jellyfish question. With Jellyfish 3.0, does the editor still need to remap all the workspaces when going from Mac to Windows PCs? This is very time consuming. Luke's already answered in the chat.
So I just wanted to get some more information on what he means by remap. But in some of the older versions of Jellyfish Manager, permissions through different versions of Samba working between Mac and Windows often causes permission issues, and then you have to go and reset permissions and do those kind of things. That's no longer a real issue anymore with Jellyfish Manager 3.0. We are using more up-to-date software now and newer protocols, and we are finding very few permissions conflicts going between Mac and Windows these days as the platforms progress. So that shouldn't be an issue anymore.
Next question from Mike. Mike asks, where and how much space is used by P5 for thumbnails and proxies stored in the Jellyfish? So yeah, the P5 software is sitting on the system partition, not on the Jellyfish itself. The thumbnails are usually 256 width, JPEG compressed, so they don't really use up much space. The proxies are MP4 files. We generally generate them at very low res, like 320p, and we normally don't render the entire original file, but maybe the first 30, 60 seconds just to give an impression of the file. But there's still significant space is going to be used depending upon how many media files you archive. So, if you've got 2 million media files, then you just need to extrapolate up from the size of one proxy to see how much space you need. So you would need to have an idea of the intended workflow and then spec out the Jellyfish with enough storage. But overall, the Jellyfish units are storage servers. They have a lot of storage in them usually, and so the amount of space that P5 might consume might be, a terabyte tops, really. So I would say doesn't generally present much of a problem for us, and get in the way of people using it.
On the larger systems, I think that'll be less of an issue, David. When we start talking about 16 terabyte Jellyfish nomads, which with a redundant array have a lot less usable storage than 16 terabytes, I guess it's all kind of relative. So it will be based on the amount of data that you're putting in and the amount that you're trying to back up and restore. So, like David says, I don't think it'll be too much of an issue, and that will all be stored on the pool. So you shouldn't have that much of an issue.
Yeah. Nick asks a follow-up to his previous question as to does that work with Incremental Plus? Incremental Plus, just to let everybody know, when we're archiving, we can archive incrementally, which means that we don't archive files that we already archived, because the file is already in the same location as a file which we previously archived. So we same size, same file name, it's the same file, so we don't archive it again. Incremental Plus was a feature added about 6 months ago, which means that you can move files after you've archived them, and Archiware is able to track that it's the same file and will not archive it again. That would still work with Incremental Plus, Nick, yes. So that's some way that you could use that. But yeah, we should probably hook you up with a support so that you can get in-depth answers to your questions. Dave asks, we're a long-time users of Jellyfish and P5 archive on SAS LTO-824 library. Our projects exceed 10 terabytes across multiple tapes, 10 TBS. What is the best method to create a redundant copy so there is backup continuity? So if your tape library is single tape drive, not two drives, then you have to run a second archive to make a second copy, which is what we recommend that you would do to make a redundant copy. If you have two drives, you can enable something called cloning, whereby two copies are created at the same time with identical tapes being created. So if you can do cloning, that's by far the best way to achieve redundant copies for backup and archive, but it requires two physical drives. Without two physical drives, you have to resort to running the job twice. The next major release of Archiware will include some cool features around that, though, that are worth looking out for. That's going to be version 7.4. A lot of questions. Alexander asks, the editor needs to relink media to the different drive letters in the PC when coming from a Mac Premiere project. Thanks for clarification. Right. So that's a follow-up to the previous. Yeah.
So this is an inherent issue between the two platforms. Mac mounts all of its shares in /volumes/ name of share where it needs to go. Windows creates shadow mounts and things like that kind of just mount stuff in the host name or map to network drives. And so when you store that into a project, especially a link project, it's going to look for data in different places depending on which platform you're on, and that leads to relinking of data. Now, there are ways to solve that. I would prefer to use the Mac version of doing that and create a shadow mount on the Windows side that mimics volumes name of share and then link that to the shared network drive. It is possible. We've done it before in a few pipelines, but that comes more down to the actual Windows versus Mac workflow and how Premiere actually stores its media and how it relinks it. So if you need any more help on that, Alex, you can reach out to our support team and the workflow team. We can see if we can figure something out.
Yeah. 3 questions from Jason Lyons. How performant is the proxy generation for Archiware P5's Mini MAM with Jellyfish hardware? Any example specs? It's an interesting question because P5 uses the FFmpeg binary to create the proxies, the transcoded movie files. By default, P5 will use an FFmpeg binary that's included within the P5 software application directory. But however, there will be another one on the Jellyfish OS that will be built and compiled specifically to take advantage of the Jellyfish hardware. So it may be possible that we can use that FFmpeg within the Jellyfish OS rather than the generic one that P5 builds and includes in its binaries folder, to start getting quite technical. So this is all quite new, the new OS on Jellyfish. So we need to figure out how that works best, Jason, and then provide some guidance via some tech infos, I think. How does that sound, Luke?
Yeah, I think we've done extensive testing with FFmpeg on Jellyfish hardware, and Jellyfish hardware is quite powerful and quite performant. And so I think the P5's FFmpeg generation will be as fast as the quality and performance is specified within the encoding algorithm. And I think because they're quite low quality proxies, I think it'll be very, very fast. And I don't think that will have any implication on the actual hardware of the system or performance of the system.
Yeah.
And yes, we do have our own FFmpeg binaries compiled into the system, and so we could figure out how to do that. But I don't think performance will be an issue. I think it'll be pretty performant and quite quick, actually.
Yeah. Jason, another question. Are raw formats supported? So if we're talking about Archiware preview generation, then yeah, we're using FFmpeg by default. But if there is another tool that can generate proxies of proprietary raw video formats, like RED, for example, then we would have to have that tool running on the Jellyfish OS. So I guess you have the ability to proxy raw files within your file manager application, Luke. So if you can do it, we should be able to do it too, kind of.
Yeah, it depends on what codec. It depends on what RAW you're talking about. Again, like if it's Foundry RAW, if it's Blackmagic RAW, if it's whatever it might be, it depends. But Jason, I think that's a question worth exploring and figuring out which exact RAW features you would like to see, and we'll see where we go from there.
Yeah, Luke and I are happy to sort of take specific questions and figure stuff out. So we'll take that one offline. Question from Dave. I'm just saying that cloud is too slow at 10 terabits per second at a time to be reasonable. I'm not sure if you're stating a fact there or asking a question, Dave. Yeah, I mean it's the cloud is as quick as your WAN connection generally. P5 can bring up multiple copy streams to kind of optimize the upload speed, but yeah, tape is always going to be quicker than pushing stuff up to a cloud. Jason asks, I appreciate that we're beyond our 40 minutes at this point, but thanks everybody for sticking around. We've got a couple more questions left. Jason asks, does Kino factor in here somewhere? That's one for you, Luke.
The answer is, Jason, no, Kino does not factor into Jellyfish Manager 3.0.
Okay, simple answer. So there you go. And final question from Mike, unless we get another question in the next moment or two. Are Thunderbolt-based LTO drives supported on Jellyfish?
Well, not directly. You can connect a Thunderbolt-based LTO drive to a Mac or a Windows machine, or Linux or whatever it might be that you want to do, and then mount the Samba share and run P5 on that computer to move it across. If you wanted to be connected directly to a Jellyfish, it would need to be one of the bigger Jellyfish that has a SAS port at the back of it, and you can connect your tape library directly to the Jellyfish.
Yeah. Or if you've got, for example, a Mac Mini with a Thunderbolt port and a Thunderbolt-based LTO drive connected, you could just switch on P5 Agent on the Jellyfish with the way that we showed you earlier, and then just add that as a client to the P5 server running on the Mac, and then you don't even need to SMB mount the storage. It's just going to be available to you through the P5 client interface. So yeah, you can certainly use Thunderbolt-based LTO drives in that manner. And
the P5 client will give you better copy speeds and better security that way than using Samba.
Yeah, it's superior to using Samba, and you don't need to rely on a Samba mount being up in order for your archiving to work. So yeah, that's great. Okay, well, we overran a bit there, guys, but I think that was quite useful. So we won't take up any more of your time. Luke, thanks ever so much for joining us for this webinar. That's been really informative. So thank you.
Thank you very much, David. It was good to be here.
Yeah, so thanks everybody for joining us. We'll see you in the next webinar. We'll send everybody an email with their resources, copy to the video recording, etc. And yeah, have a good rest of your day. Cheers, everybody. And bye, Luke.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.